I'm Carlos. I'm with RMS Slot Cars, and we sell the RMS 124 scale RMS 124 motors for Carrera digital 124 scale cars. We also have the ones for the 132nd scale cars. But today I'm going to talk to you about how to install the motor, your RMS upgraded motor, into a BMW M1, specifically a Carrera digital 124 BMW M1. For the most part, it's the same as any other car, but these are a little trickier. So I want to give you a couple tips on how to do it. Most of the guys replace their motors because they want more speed. And frankly, it's just a lot more fun if you have more speed. And that's the reason you want to upgrade your motor and get more speed and stuff like that. It's just like, you know, it's cooler. You can get more, have a lot more fun with power slides. It just makes the racing that much more exciting because the acceleration is so much better. So even with a small track, you just have a lot more fun with the car once you install the upgraded motor. It's hard to provide a perception of speed or RPMs through the internet like this, but I don't know if you can probably be able to hear. Doesn't sound bad, but you know, when you take off, it kind of, you know, that's not too bad. It's the Carrera stock motor is nice and torquey, so you have great get up off of a dead start, no doubt about it. It's just that you don't have the top end speed. So the OEM motor is rated at 18,000 RPM at 18 volts. For what I'm doing today, I'm using just a 132nd scale power supply. But again, so you go down to about 12 volts. This goes down to about 12,000 RPM, whereas max RPM for the RMS motor is like 30,000 RPMs at 12 volts. So this is 12,000 RPMs at 12 volts, and this one is 30,000 RPM at 12 volts. So at 18 volts, who knows? Super duper fast. It's crazy fast. I'll say it that way. But so the one thing about this car, I'm gonna get started now. So officially the clock starts now as far as how to swap the motor from the stock motor to the RMS motor. Okay. So the main thing I want to tell you about is before you get started, it's gonna sound crazy. You're gonna put one magnet here. This is just spare magnet from I have laying around. This magnet is important because it keeps any of the inside from moving around once you take the body off. But that's only the second most important part. Actually, the most important thing is to put another magnet right here, okay? And this will keep the magnet from moving around. And this magnet that's in there, I don't know why, will jump around and like leap out of the car. So this magnet is super important because it's a smaller magnet inside the car. It'll just leap out. You'll see what I mean when I open it up. But the next step is just to remove the four body screws. And again, I use a magnet on my screwdriver because it helps to hold screws in place. They don't go flopping around, and I never have to worry about screws rolling around on me. And also in between, and I can just leave them on the screwdriver as I continue to unscrew the screws. So it's a neat little trick that I learned a few years ago from, I don't know, somebody thinking maybe in the model railroad community or something like that, about that. So, and after that, just take them off, set them here to the side. Normally I work on a little bit of a silicone mat, but for this, I don't have my mat over here. So there we go. We take, the body's off. Here's the OEM motor right here. Oh, and before I go too far, for the M1, it has a special motor. We have the motors for the regular cars, then we have the one for the M1. You know it's the M1 motor because it has the white pinion gear, nylon pinion gear, and they have a couple stickers, sticker here, sticker here. The packaging has changed over the years, but I still try to make sure I always badge these motors for what they are for the M1 exclusively. There's a text sheet insert inside, that tells you how to do what I'm going to show you to do today. If you have any questions, you can always email me. My email address is rmsslotcars@gmail.com. rmsslotcars@gmail.com. Again, this pinion will have the nylon 14-tooth gear on it. it's a larger gear than what's on the stock Carrera motor. So that's important to identify. So if you try to put this motor in a regular car that's not an M1, not the BMW M1, it's not going to work. Okay, just want to put that out there for you. But again, starting to go over, make sure you put one magnet here, and be sure to put this magnet here. If you don't, this magnet assembly that's under this this little hold down piece can release and can become dislodged. And the worst one is the magnet that's under the axle. That one is really hard to find and really hard to try to reinstall because of the magnets in the motor. So this please put a magnet on the bottom right here if you're doing this upgrade. Okay. Let me see. Before I even get started with that, I want to take the pin, release the connector, and again here I'll go ahead and start unscrewing now. That's one. That's two. And these screws, these two will be the longer screws. These two are longer and these two are shorter, just so that you know. And I'll sit them down here in a second and show you what I mean. Matter of fact, I'll do it right now before I take that last screw out. The back end screws are that length. I can set it on the white part like that. And then your longer screw in the front part is that long. So you can see the difference in the length of the screws, okay? So here's the last screw right here. Again, I already taken the motor plug out. So I'll be good to go once I take this one out. You have your little retain clip, okay? I actually don't like to set the car down there. I'm going to sit the screws here to the side because I don't like sitting them on my track, especially when there's power on the track, which I will turn off. Okay. So now, once you have all 4 screws removed, I kind of try to hold this little metal clip down with one finger and just remove this, just pull it straight up and out. And that way you don't have to worry about this moving around. But this magnet, there's a magnet under this little clip right here, and that's the one you don't want to move. It's hard to find. It'll just go away or whatever. It literally flies out. And try to remember the orientation of it is almost impossible. So enough about that. Okay. Next thing is take these 2 screws here out. These are the axle screws. And after that, we'll remove the motor pod screws. We're gonna reinstall the axle screws, but we do not reinstall the motor pod screws. Okay. So I'll show you what I mean by that. Okay, and one of the things I do is I try to move the car out of the way, and I have everything in one orientation. So because I'm flipping it over, I have it flipped over, so that way I'll be able to put the motor in the same way as this is when it's upside down. Okay, so let's see. I'll get started here. Stay in there. And you can kind of come out a little bit. Okay, so I lift this out. And if the screws stay in, I like to just leave them in there and call it good. And that way I don't have to worry about searching for the screws or anything like that. Looks like I've already worked on this one right here because I removed that motor part screw you'd have to remove, and this one as well. So in this situation, there's only one motor part screw in here right now because I've worked on this car before, it looks like. So I'm going to remove that one motor pod screw, remove the motor. And then just for safekeeping, I will reinstall the motor pod screw into the old motor because I do not use it with the RMS motor. Okay, and I'll show you if you want more details. So I'll just put the old motor to the side. Okay, I have the new motor. Okay, and the main thing is you thread the wiring through the case. Okay, so you thread it through, you get it in there. You make sure the O-ring is pressed firmly in there, okay? And again, as you can see, the screw holes don't line up, but that's okay because when you tighten the motor down, it holds it in place, and then the O-ring that's sitting there aligns the motor in the proper place, okay? So here's the motor pod, and I go ahead and grab my axle just as we had it. I put it in. And screw. Two screws. There we go. Okay. As you can see, the motor, the wires are coming up through the top, so I'll go right to the front of the car. So I'll just go ahead and set this in. Got it back, have it back in place. Okay. Now I'll grab my long screw. Well, let's see, my hold down my retainer first. Grab my long screw and get it going first. Whoops. Okay, here. And this goes a lot smoother, but I'm on camera here, so trying to talk and think. There's a first screw, and at that point, you're good to go. You can even remove the bottom side magnets if you want to, but I at least want to get 2 screws in there before I do that. Okay. The most important thing at this point, go ahead, once you have the at least 2 screws in there, go ahead and remove your magnets that were holding it in place. I would make a video showing you what happens if you don't put those magnets right there, but I don't feel like chasing parts all around my little rec room down here, so I'm not going to do that. You can find out for yourself if you don't use the magnets to hold something in place. And it doesn't matter what kind of magnets you get. They can be from any kid's toy you have laying around, from any speaker. As long as it's small enough where it won't get in the way of anything, that's all that really matters, you know. In some ways, the bigger it is, the better off you are, because that way you don't have to worry about forgetting it, because you don't want to forget you left the magnet here. Okay, now I go ahead and reinstall the motor. And just because you're doing anything technical, you should always test things. But look at that nice smooth gear mesh. I mean, it's just amazing. You know, gears are standard, so that's the thing about it. It's not that we did anything special. It's just that gears are pretty standard and they're pretty easy to come by. So you get that in there, get it there, and it's just super duper fast. So let me put that back in like that. Reinstall the body. Okay. The screws back in there where they belong. Okay. And this is where the magnet on the screwdriver comes in really handy, because otherwise it's hard to get that screw in this little cavity right there. So if you have the magnet on the screwdriver, so it won't even move around, you can just, you know, I don't know if you can see, well, whatever happens, but you'll notice it's really good, easy to put the screw in there and get it in there. So I love the magnet on the screwdriver. Sometimes you can buy magnetic screwdrivers, but sometimes you don't want to use a magnetic screwdriver. So it's great to have one where you just add a magnet to your screwdriver. So there we go. Now it's back on. We put it on there, and there we put it back on, and we are good to go. So boom, boom. And it's going to be a little bit louder because everything's spinning so much faster. So that's what that's all about. So if you have any question about this process or any of the products we offer, you can email us at rmsslotcars@gmail.com. Okay, thank you very much.